When you've read enough Korean manhwa, you start delving into the Chinese manhwa scene and you start seeing what's available there. At first, it can seem very exciting, but then you notice there's a lot of similarities between almost every single series based on cultivation. The worlds look very similar, and the way the characters act as well. But what I will say is there are things that Chinese manhwa do extraordinarily well, and some great manhwa out there worth your time and worth reading. I'm going to be giving you guys a few recommendations in the coming minutes as to what you should be reading in the Chinese manhwa realm, what there is that's good about it, and maybe the things you might not like as much about it. For one, Chinese manhwa are absolutely longer running in general than Korean manhwa, which is a plus and a minus. It means there's more content. They often have a very built out development system and leveling system or magic system, however you want to call it, which is cultivation in their case. But they often meander and struggle to close off their series in a meaningful and satisfying way. However, it gives you stuff to read for a very long time, and a lot of those things have some great arcs that are absolutely worth your time. But when you come across a gem that really does things right, it can be absolutely worth your time. If you like the content on this channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe to it. I would be deeply appreciative if you did that. And let's get right into the manhwa I'm going to be recommending to you today. Starting off with one of the best manhwa I think out there, it's a finished one, Feng Shen Ji. Feng Shen Ji is a phenomenal series. The art is oh so beautiful, and I will say it is a bit more concise than most of the other things on this list. It is a finished series, which is also something that's nice, which I don't think anything on my list other than that is finished, which is always a challenge. Feng Shen Ji follows basically the son of a character that dies very early on in the storyline, like very, very, very early on in the storyline, so it's not a huge spoiler. And his rise up and fight against the powers that be. The power system is insane. The visuals are phenomenal. But what I will say, and I'll give this advice to anyone getting into manhwa, whether it be Chinese, Korean, or even manga, you need to be open to art styles that are not always the same. If you keep your mind open a little bit, you can learn to enjoy things that initially seem a little jarring. I'm thinking Legend of Northern Blade in regards to Korean manhwa that just doesn't look the same as everything else. But see that as a plus. Not everything has to look exactly the same. This one definitely looks different than anything else on the list, but it is oh so beautiful, oh so beautiful. The action and this idea of fighting against this deity or god and trying to find your place in the world for your people, I think is a storyline that I really enjoy and is also a little different than the other things on this list as well. The second one I'm going to recommend is Apotheosis, and I'm going to kind of put it with Martial Peak, which is my next recommendation, as kind of a similar type thing. These are cultivation stories, but cultivation with realms. So basically, there's these higher realms above the earth, above our own, where more powerful people live, and it's the rising up within those realms in these stories, which is either going to be a big plus for you because there's always continuous growth and new challenges and people that are stronger than your protagonist, which is fun, or it's going to be real redundant and repetitive because it's basically always the main character getting stronger. I think Apotheosis is definitely a stronger series than Martial Peak, despite me having actually dropped Apotheosis and still reading Martial Peak. Martial Peak is now at almost 1,900 chapters at the time of me recording this video, and Apotheosis, if I remember well, should be around 900 or something like that. These are very long-running series. These are very short chapters, though, so I don't think it's actually like 1,800 chapters. It's more the equivalent of maybe 600, but because they're so short. Sometimes they're like 5 or 6 panels. What I will say, itemization, so deep. If you think that it's just going to be, well, we're going to get over stuff and we're never going to talk about it again, not the case. These series are very good at referencing things that occurred 800 chapters ago. Be that a power that you got a long time ago, it'll come back up later, which makes it feel like it's more of a cohesive world and that they're actually putting the time in developing this, because it's something that frustrates me a lot, but like, even look at Dragon Ball. I think it's because it's more generic and more easy to reference. Like, Super Saiyan 1 or Super Saiyan 2 is not very useful anymore when people are at the level of Super Saiyan gods. But in the case of these series, there's things like sword skills or insects or things that they encounter earlier on that are still useful in their unique way because they get upgraded later on. And it's interesting. For me, honestly, I have to praise them for this. The world building is good. The protagonist of Apotheosis is definitely the better protagonist, I find, between that and Marshall Peak. Though I will say, if you like a character that kind of doesn't give a damn and puts the beat down on his opponents and isn't afraid to be a savage murderer when he needs to be, Yang Kai from Marshall Peak might be your jam. You might really enjoy him quite a bit. But I think that the drive of the protagonist of Apotheosis to save his sister, and the way he does not have as many love interests so far as Yang Kai does. Yang Kai has, in Marshall Peak, has a harem, which is not my jam. Not a big fan of harems in general. But yeah, these series are definitely worth your time if you're into those things. But I will say, check out other stuff on this list long before you actually do check out Marshall Peak and Apotheosis, just because they are big investments of time, and I do believe that there's better stuff out there right now, but they're absolutely worth checking out when you do. I would rank them in the 7 range, most likely 6.57. That sounds really low, but that's because they're such long-running series, and they don't see any clear sign of ending anytime soon. So take that as you will. To switch things up, this is a series that just started not that long ago, but I am absolutely loving, and I think you should get on this. It's I Am the Fated Villain. Protagonist is awesome. He's not a good guy. He's a villainous, super powerful guy. And he finds that, like, he's transposed into this body as this higher being. He's there for this clan, and his fate is to be the villain and to be defeated eventually. But he finds by making the hero's life miserable, his karma, his future changes according to that. So basically, as the hero's descends, because he's going through misery, his goes up. So it's this really weird dynamic, and I think it's a really interesting story type. The characters look really cool. The art style is awesome. And the ladies look very nice. The next one's going to be another long-running series. We're at 600 and something chapters for this one. Rebirth of the Immortal, Urban Immortal Cultivator. Cultivation again. This is a, I won't say second chance story. Character reaches the pinnacle of his power level. He gets a chance to go back in time to his 17-year-old body. He's in this cultivation type world, but the world he goes back to is actually Earth because he was originally from Earth. This is a storyline that you'll see in a few series, but what I do like is his interaction with the world around him. He comes back in a weaker body, but with the same knowledge and wisdom that he had from his previous one. So obviously he's going to get more powerful really quickly, but it leads to some very fun fights and fun interactions with other characters. It also means his relationships with humans around him change a lot because he knows what he's worth and what his value is, and he's not going to fall for the same stuff again. So you should definitely check this one out if you like that kind of plot line. The art style is okay. I don't think it's phenomenal. There's definitely better stuff out there, but I think it's a fun series to follow, and at 600 something chapters, it'll keep you busy for quite some time. The next one is kind of a tragedy for me, and that is Master of Goo. So Master of Goo is a phenomenal series. I'm actually not going to tell you too much about it because I think you should go check it out. It follows I'll just say the protagonist is someone with a questionable morality who is brutal and does some rough things. But what I will say particularly about it that is tragic is that it'll never end. I still think it's worth reading, which is very strange for me, because a series that doesn't end, I don't think normally I would recommend. However, in this case, I think I will. The simple reason for why I would recommend it is the ride is so fun. It's a really good story. It really develops well that character and his interaction with those around him, and it's so fun to read. And some of these beatdowns and some of these brutal moments are like memorable moments in Manhua. Like, they're really, really worth your time. The reason it's not finished is apparently related to content within the book not matching Chinese censors, and that was apparently the reason why it was canceled. I don't know the facts behind the thing, so I won't claim knowledge, but this is what some of the discussions online are regarding why it was never finished. That being said, it is still a phenomenal series, and I think you should check it out. It is really, really... The next thing I'm going to recommend is actually, technically, I think it's 4 series, if I remember, 4 or 5. The Soulland series. They are all interconnected, however, you can read them all independently and you won't feel lost in the slightest. I read them, I think, in the order. I read Soulland 1, then Soulland 3, then Soulland 2, and that's the only ones I've read so far. Soulland basically follow against cultivators, reincarnation stories, and one of them race from childhood, alternative types of powers. Like one of them has a grass type power. There's a poison type power. Like there's some really interesting power systems in this one. But what I like about the Soulland stories actually is they manage ensemble casts very well. They have really good protagonists, but they develop relationships really well. And they're actually meaningful relationships with friends, which there's a lot of solo stories right now, and I appreciate a good ensemble cast when I see one. I still am someone that loves to follow the protagonist. If you see me on stream, I always complain about the fact that I don't like when we follow multiple protagonists in a story. One Piece is an example of this, where multiple characters, you spend like focused time on them, but I'm less of a fan of stories like that. I'm more of a fan of following one hero and the people around him. And this is one of those cases where it's a hero and people around him, and that's the fundamentals of the story. They're really fun stories, and I would recommend. I really loved Soulland 3. I think it was like one of the better ones. But Soulland 1 was very good as well. 2 was okay. I think they're all worth it, and they all have a lot of chapters to read. The colors are really vibrant, and the art style is on point. I think it's absolutely worth checking out. All right, the next one, I'm going to recommend 2 one-shot. That is because they're from the same author. One is called Star Martial God Technique, and the other one is Tales of Demons and Gods. You may know these ones. They are pretty popular. Star Martial God Technique, I'll start with that one because it's the least known of the 2. Star Martial God Technique follows a character in a world where there's different magic systems between like fire, earth, and stuff like that. His power is Star, which is the most rare, and it's the one he's interested in following. But it's very hard to get like books for that and become more powerful in it. But he becomes this very powerful cultivator. Is it cultivator? I don't know if he's a cultivator in that one actually. But he becomes very powerful, and he's just a good character, a good guy. What I will say, there's a weird transition at the end of what I'll call the first season into the second season, because the story seems to end, but then it continues. It's fine. It's still good. It's still worth your time. Actually, the newest arc is really good, so it's worth it. But there is a little jarring change in the middle of it that seems strange. The fights are really on point. The main character builds relationships with a lot of different people. I don't mean necessarily romantic relationships, but he builds a lot of relationships, and they're good, solid relationships. I'll call him a goody two-shoes protagonist. He's not villainous in any way, shape, or form. He's there to save people and help people. That is his only goal in life. And raising up his clan and the people around him that have been hurt and making sure that everyone is safe. But he's a good protagonist and definitely worth checking out, absolutely. On the other side, Tales of Demons and Gods follows a protagonist that was obsessed with becoming more powerful in his world, stole books of power, managed to go back in time to his younger body, and now he's on a quest to protect and build up the people around him and the family and the friend. Well, it's not family, actually. It's the friends that he lost along the way as the world slowly fell into madness and defeated by the beasts. What I will say about Tales of Demons and Gods is it has world building like few other things do. And unlike most cultivation stories, this one does not feel like a natural cultivation stories. The ideas of these beast souls that you can integrate with, which become these transformations for you, are very powerful and really cool. But what's great about Ni Li in this is his ability to interact with others, build connections with others. He's funny. He's a bit of a pervert, but at the same time, he's there to help those around him. He's built up a bit of a harem, but he's only in love with one woman because he was with her in his previous life, and he always sees her as his love interest. But his care for his friends and the fact that he's weaker than his friends for a good portion of the story, he just knows more stuff than them, is fun. It's an interesting thing, and his knowledge of the world is such a blast to follow. I will say a little asterisk next to this series, and even Star Martial God Technique, the author is notorious for not finishing his stories. So actually, Tales of Demons and Gods, he wasn't done writing the light novel, and he jumped to Star Martial God Technique because he got a little tired of writing that one. And apparently, same things happen with Star Martial God Technique where he's jumped to something else. Doesn't mean he's not going to finish it. Doesn't mean that the adaptation can't continue even if he doesn't finish it. But it does mean that there's a chance that we don't end these series. So I do have to give an asterisk to that. But particularly Tales of Demons and Gods, even for where it's at, you should read it because it is one of the great Chinese manhwas in my opinion. I think it's phenomenal, phenomenal. I'm going to finish things off with probably the Chinese manhwa that is the most followed right now. It is loved to death, and that is Magic Emperor. Oh my god, this thing is so much fun. And that's what's most important, guys. If you have fun with a series, it really doesn't matter what its flaws are. It's just that you're having fun with it. Magic Emperor has amazing visuals, has a protagonist that when I say is cold, oh, he's cold. He's cold, he's villainous, he's not a good dude, but he's so much fun to watch on screen. The manipulations that he pulls on powerful characters far beyond himself are awesome. The funny thing is, so this is another character about like the most powerful guy being betrayed and basically having a chance to be transposed into the body of someone else. But it's so irrelevant, in all honesty, to the setup of this story. All that matters is because the character that he was isn't there anymore. The only thing that remains is the loyalty, technically, to the family that kid guy served. And it's a plot device, 100%, just to make sure he doesn't kill just everyone, because that would just be what the protagonist would do. But it is so much fun, guys. The fights are so cool. The visuals and the color in this series are on point. The character designs are pretty good. They're not that original, but when you go into fight mode and they really put effort on what Zhao Yifan looks like and the characters he's fighting against, like they make this shit look really, really good. So if you're not reading Magic Emperor, I'm kind of shocked because you know what Chinese manhwa is, but you're not reading Magic Emperor. But you should. It definitely should. What I will say is I don't think these type of characters are for everyone. He does some crap that it's questionable. He poisons people with bloodworms and keeps control over their mind and threatens to murder them if they don't follow what he does. Like, there's definitely things here that are not for everyone, and I think most people will find enjoyment in the series for what it is, but I can understand why it's not necessarily for everyone, and hopefully something else on the things I mentioned are things you'll like. If you like this type of discussion around manhwa, Chinese manhwa, Korean manhwa, manga as well, I'll be doing stuff around manga as well. Please do comment, leave recommendations for stuff you'd like me to talk about. I'd love to talk about things that you guys are interested in, as well as leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. So with that, guys, thank you so much for your time today, and have yourself a great day.